Hey Nob Hill Nighthawks, here we are with Module 1, Lesson 14. We're going to continue working with subtraction. So this is, I am successful when I can solve word problems with tape diagrams and the standard subtraction algorithm. So really similar to what we were doing in Lesson 13, but there's going to be more decomposing or more borrowing, and we're going to work on setting that up before we do our subtraction. Okay, so our first problem is 22,397 minus 3,745. So before we even start to do any of the subtraction, I want us to set the problem up. And what I mean by that is let's look and see where do we need to do any borrowing or decomposing from the larger units so we can subtract. Okay, kind of a glare on it, but so that's a 7 and a 7. So 7 minus 5, we can do that, okay? 9 minus 4, we can do that. 3 minus 7, we won't be able to do that, so this is where we need to decompose or borrow from our larger unit. So we're going to do that first before we do any subtraction, okay? So remember, if I'm going to borrow or decompose from the larger unit, I'm going to take away one of those, which is going to leave me with 1 because I started with 2. Remember, if I take one of my larger unit and move it to a smaller unit, then it decomposes it into 10. So that's why I'm adding 10 to my hundredths place. So my 3 is going to become 13. Okay, so now 13 minus 7, I can do that. 1 minus 3, I can't do that, so I'm going to have to decompose and borrow again. So I'm going to come to here, that 2, I'm going to take away one of them. And my 1, instead of it being 1, because I'm going to add 10 to it, is going to become 11. Okay, so now I can subtract. It's all set up, and I can just go through and do the simple subtraction. So 7 minus 5 is 2. 9 minus 4 is 5. 13 minus 7 gives me 6. Bring my comma down. 11 minus 3 is 8. And then 1, I don't have any thousands to take away, so my thousand stays the same. So 18,652 is our difference between these two numbers. So remember when I mentioned that there's keywords that are going to help you figure out what type of math you have to do. If it's asking you what is the difference, that's subtraction. Okay, so difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. All right, let's do another one. Okay, here's our next problem. So we have 210,290 minus 45,720. So when it mentioned the tape diagram in our focus, so this is what our tape diagram is going to look for a subtraction problem. I know my whole, but I only know one of the parts. So our answer is going to be that missing part to the tape diagram. We're starting with 210,290. I know that one part is 45,720. So the difference between those two will be our second part, the answer to our problem. Okay, so now we have to set the problem up. Look at each place value, see if we need to do any decomposing before we can subtract. 0 and 0, check, we can do that. 9 minus 2, yep, we can do that. 2 minus 7, we're not going to be able to do that. Look to the left, we don't have anything in our thousands place. So we have to move one more and move it over to where we need that decomposing to happen. So we're going to have to decompose twice to set up our hundreds place. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to borrow from the thousands because there's 1. That's going to leave that with 0. I'm going to add 10 to my thousands place, which makes it 10. But I need to decompose this one more time, so I have 10 more in my hundreds place. Okay, so I'm going to decompose that 10 again, taking 1 away, which is going to make it 9. I'm going to add 10 to my hundreds place, so it's going to give me 12. Okay, so now I would be able to subtract 12 minus 7. Got it. 9 minus 5. Yep, we can do that. 0 minus 4. Nope, we're going to need to borrow and decompose. So my 2 is going to become a 1. I'm going to add 10 to my 0, which is going to change my 0 to 10. Now my problem is set up to where I can go back and subtract. Okay, 0 minus 0 gives me 0. 9 minus 2, 7. 12 minus 7, 5. 9 minus 5 is 4. 10 minus 4 is 6. Bring my 1 down. There's no hundred thousands to subtract. So my other part is 164,570. So it's important, again, I talk about neatness. When we're having to decompose multiple times, you can easily see how messy and confusing that can be if you're mushing your numbers together or you're not writing them nice and neat and clear. So again, turn that paper sideways if you want to, and it'll give you those nice clean lines. Okay. All right, we have 2 more. All right, so our next one's a word problem. So I'm going to read it to you and then show you how I set up my work. So it says Bryce needed to purchase a large order of computer supplies for his company. He was allowed to spend $859,239 on computers. However, he ended up only spending $272,650. How much money was left? So for our tape diagram to show this, we can say, well, we know that he had $859,239 to spend. So that was our whole. But he only spent $272,650. So that's part of our whole. And we want to know, well, how much is left? That's our answer. Okay. So just like the other subtraction problems, we're going to look and see where do we need to decompose, where do we need to borrow and move over. Sorry about those glares on there, you guys. But we're going to set the problem up first before we do subtraction. Okay. So 9 minus 0. We can do that. We have enough. 3 minus 5. We don't have enough. So let's borrow, decompose our hundreds. That's going to leave me with 1. I'm going to add 10 to my tens, which is going to give me 13. Okay, so my 1s and my 10s are set up. 1 minus 6. I'm going to have to decompose some of my thousands to give me enough in the hundreds. So my 9 is going to become an 8. I'm going to add 10 to my 1, which is going to give me 11. Okay, so my hundreds is set up. My thousands, 8 minus 2. Yep, we can do that. 5 minus 7, don't have enough, so we're going to decompose our hundred thousands. So my 8 is going to become a 7. I'm going to add 10 of those to my 10,000s place, so my 5 is going to become 15. So we had to decompose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And sometimes if you set the problem up first, it's easier, it's cleaner, it's nice and neat because then you get to work in and you might miss a step. And so set the problem up first, make sure you have enough in each place value before you subtract, and then go back into your ones and start the subtraction. Okay, so 9 minus 0 gives me 9. 13 minus 5 gives me 8. 11 minus 6 is 5. Bring my comma down into the answer. 8 minus 2 is 6. 15 minus 7. When you get to these bigger problems, I always like to find my tens. So 5 less would give me 10. 3 less is 7. So 5, 8. There's all sorts of strategies you can work in your brain to subtract. 7 minus 2 is 5. And that's why I like to do number talks, because maybe you have a strategy that I don't know about, but I'm like, hey, that really makes sense to do that mental math. All right, so our difference is $586 589. So this is how much they had left. And this is the second part to our whole. So 586,589. All right, one more problem. Okay, here's our last one. With subtraction, where we see the most problems is when there's a lot of zeros. If there's a lot of decomposing, a lot of borrowing, that's where we usually see the most mistakes. I wanted to do one more where we're going to have to borrow 3 or 4 times before we can even start the problem, okay? So if you notice, my ones, I'm already having to decompose. I don't have 6 minus 7. I don't have enough. But look when you look to the left, a 0. Look to the left again, another 0. So we have to go all the way to the thousands to decompose and borrow before we can even subtract our ones. So this is why it's important just to set the whole problem up, then go back and subtract, okay? So I'm gonna come all the way to my thousands, nice and neat. I'm gonna make sure I'm clean so I know where my numbers are. My 4 is gonna become a 3. My hundreds, there's nothing there, so I'm gonna add that 10. Okay, but I'm not done. I have to get these values all the way down to my ones. So I'm gonna decompose again. That 10 becomes a 9. My tens place, I have 0, so that's gonna become 10. But I still need some for my ones, so I have to do it one more time. That 10 in my tens place is gonna become a 9. My 6 and the ones, I'm gonna add 10 to that. It's gonna become 16. So now we're gonna double check, make sure it's set up so that we can subtract correctly. 16 minus 7, yep. 9 minus 1, yep. 3 minus 1, and we're good in our 10,000s and 100,000s. So we can go ahead and subtract. So 16 minus 7 leaves us with 9. 9 minus 1, 8. 9 minus 1, 8. Bring our comma down. 3 minus 1, 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. 1 minus 1 is 0. When you have zeros at the beginning of your number, we don't need them there because we wouldn't say 0, 0, 2,000. We just would read this as 2,889 is our difference. All right, you guys. Decomposing and borrowing will be our focus in small groups. We'll work through some more problems together, ask questions, and let us know if you need any help. And we will see you guys soon. Have a great afternoon.